Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for all your texts and comments over the weekend. For people that I met out and about shopping and talking about the show and different things that we do, it's good to hear the interaction and I suppose the reaction we're having with our listeners. Thanks to Ollie and Mary, and our text and WhatsApp number is 083 3333 975. You can call Laura on 051 846 123. Declan Smith is going to be talking to us about Lice. Declan Power is going to be talking about Lice Smith in a little while. I'm also going to be talking to Niall Mulligan about that difficult subject of Nits. We don't even want to mention it yet. OK. Dean Maria is coming in to talk about soles of their shoes and a special commemorative thing that's happening regarding abuse against women. Gavin's going to be in on sports. Declan McConnell about politics over the weekend. And also we're going to be talking to John McGrath's Butchers in Lismore on their famous spiced beef recipe. And people ordering meat for Christmas. Let us know what you think. Now, firstly, I want to start off the week in a good mood, a good spirit. Christmas, we're all about shopping locally. We're teaming up with Waterford Chamber to promote the Waterford gift voucher. The gift voucher is accepted in over 150 participating businesses, shops and hotels in Waterford City and County. The vouchers are in denominations of 10, 25 and 50 euros. So we want to give you a voucher, and our prize first is... the question is, the Waterford gift voucher is accepted in over how many retail outlets in Waterford and Tramore? Let us know. Text us 083 3333 975. We've got a €50 gift voucher to give out this morning. So the Waterford gift voucher is accepted in how many retails in Waterford and Tramore? Text us in 083 3333 975. Firstly, the very, very difficult and very important subject of the budget in Waterford City and County Council. Michael Walsh, the City Manager, talking on Friday at the very important meeting. Owen Dalton from the Munster Express and the Waterford WLR News team is joining me in a second. Michael Walsh, this is what he had to say last Friday.
I believe we have a choice, and it's a simple choice, and it's a desperately difficult political choice in many respects to make, but I believe we have a choice as to whether we want to be a council that are going to drive on and deliver the services and the promotion and the opportunity that this city needs at what I believe to be a tipping point, and that we ask ourselves, are we prepared to pay for those services? Are we prepared to pay for those for that promotion, and are we prepared to pay for driving on the city? Or do we want to exist on the basis that we're going to cut the bone, everything to the bone, end up delivering very poor services, generally speaking, and, in a sense, end up going nowhere quickly?
Owen, good morning.
Morning, Damien.
Thank you for joining us. Owen, what was the purpose of this meeting last Friday?
So the meeting was essentially, it's the Council's annual budget meeting. This particular one, the main focus was how to plug that €1.3 million gap that has came about as a result of a fairly technical issue that arose through a re-evaluation of Irish water assets. It was originally a €3.3 million gap. The Department of Housing, Planning and Local Government has said that it will give a once-off payment of €2 million to Waterford Council for
$3 million. So it was a packed meeting, I presume, yeah?
Yeah, it was.
How long did it go on for?
Not very long, actually. I think the budget meetings can sometimes drag on for certainly a couple of hours. This one was over and done with in less than an hour, as essentially, I suppose, different councillors were probably getting quite ratty with each other. And
not for the first time?
No.
Now, Michael Walsh is one of the central players in this. He's the Waterford City and County Manager. What effectively was his message throughout the meeting? So
he proposed a 5% increase in commercial rates for businesses across Waterford City and County. I suppose previous years, I mean, he tends to generally look at maybe a proposal such as that, or maybe would say local property tax, where he'll propose maybe a 10% increase or larger. It's becomes quite expected. I think what was unexpected was the strength of the language he probably used throughout the meeting, throughout his initial address, which was however long, maybe 15 to 20 minutes. And he was pointing to a €3.5 million cuts to rates that was introduced in 2014. He said that there had been, I believe, just one increase to rates in the past decade in Waterford. I'd imagine businesses would also point out that came about during that much of that decade was taken up by a recession. So that was essentially his message to the councillors, that without that increase, services will be cut to the bone. If you want services to be anyway decent in Waterford, then there has to be some give, essentially.
The councillors, how did they receive this message? The situation politically is that
there are different groups within that pact. Sinn Féin's one was essentially that they want to go back to the Housing Minister. They want to go back to Minister for Local Government as well, John Paul Phelan, and to continue lobbying for further funding. Message from the Green Party was something similar along the lines of this is an example of Waterford, I suppose, being left behind by the government, and at the same time would have been coming from the Greens and from Labour, calling on Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, who sit.
Yeah. In terms of, and the reason I mentioned that is this, Eamon Quinlan sent us in a statement, Fianna Fáil councillor, and he basically accused Sinn Féin of bringing Stormont-type politics into the council chamber. And this idea, and we spoke to Councillor McGuinness about this last week, this idea of putting this off for another day, going to the Housing Minister, even though the government has said there won't be a cent more than the 2 million, and that's it. So what was coming from the opposition benches, from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael?
I suppose we'll take, say, probably two most vocal would have been John Cummins and Eddie Mulligan, who are also, I suppose, would also be going for general election within about 6 months' time or sooner, depending how the vote of confidence goes this week in the Dáil. What they would have been saying essentially is, look, they've already gotten 2 million, and John Cummins would have been quite strident in pointing to that 2 million, that was done through lobbying work by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. They have done their bit. It's now up for Sinn Féin, etc., to do theirs. I noticed Eddie Mulligan would have said that, and like there is talk, I suppose, of an alternative budget maybe being proposed by Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael over the next 2 weeks. They have 2 weeks. That alternative budget, you would have to imagine, would include serious cuts to services if there is going to be no commercial rates increase. And Eddie Mulligan himself would have spoke of going through the budget line by line, bringing in cuts. He was saying that, wondering, has Sinn Féin done? Do you have the support, Eddie Mulligan or John Cummins, from their own actual colleagues for something like that? Because, put it like this, those councils will get their ears reddened anytime they go for a walkabout.
We spoke with Michael Garland from, I suppose, representing a number of Waterford businesses and business groupings in the town and the city, and they're due to meet this week with representatives of Sinn Féin and some of the other members of the pact. They're meeting, I think, at Boxworks in town. What's happening behind the scenes now, do you think? Is there a bit of horse trading going on?
You'd have to look and say what Michael Welch has done in terms of, you'd have to think that he's maybe also given the parties there a little bit of wiggle room in terms of he is just looking at rates at the moment. It is a possibility to maybe look at other services and make savings there, but also perhaps then include a smaller increase in rates. And like that phrase you put on the blue jersey was used a lot in the chamber last week. You can flip that phrase around and apply it to different sections of Waterford as well. If you wanted to look at it in that kind of maybe somewhat glib way.
There's no point putting on the blue jersey if you don't have enough money to buy a jersey. So you have to actually have money in your account. So how ultimately, how is this going to be fixed? How is the 1.3 million going to be fixed? What's your view about it?
If it is not fixed, if you take it, say, if Sinn Féin were to maintain their own line, what likely would happen then is a commissioner would get appointed. If we assume that the department doesn't and the government does not provide any more funding, a commissioner gets appointed, I believe, after the 14th of December, or even after the 13th of December, Friday the 13th as it happens.
What does this commissioner do? This commissioner is in charge of the council, effectively. The councillors are not redundant, but their decision-making powers are put on hold. Yeah,
and I think it was Adam Wise asked the question on Friday, can that commissioner just implement Michael Walsh's proposal of 5% increase to rates, and he can, or she can. The Commissioner, it's really up to that particular individual. And I think the last time something like that would have happened in Waterford, I was speaking to a former member about it a couple of months ago, and I think you're going into the late 1950s, early 1960s, that a Commissioner had to be appointed to pass a budget in Waterford. How would I put it? Is it likely that it will get to that point? You'd have to figure someone will maybe crack or compromise, what way you want to phrase it, before then. And you have to consider as well the likes of Labour and the Greens and Independents are part of that alliance that control the council. They will have their own views, I suppose, as well, and they probably haven't dug their heels in as much as Sinn Féin have on this.
You see, in other times, after local elections, it's a time when city managers across the country county managers look for rates increases because you don't have a local election for a number of years afterwards. We're in a different situation now because we're going to have a general election within the next 6 months. So there's major politics at play.
There is, and we'll go back again to an alternative budget that there was talks of one being proposed by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. That may well be the problem, that will actually put any proposal like that on hold from them, because there is a general election coming up within the next couple of months, if not sooner.
Owen Dalton, thanks very much.
No problem, thank you.
Owen, thank you for joining us. Some texts and comments coming in. Pa says the City Council are owed millions in rent arrears. That's one of the reasons for our deficit. Too many people expect everything for nothing and the rest suffer. Rent arrears is something that has been raised by some councillors and some officials, and it is an issue I know that the council are trying to deal with. If you are in rent arrears, or if you're having trouble paying your rent, or if you have any views on this, let us know. I'd like to hear your views, please. 083 3333 975. Other people texting in that we need to increase the property tax like they did in Kerry, where the extra funds will pay for a new greenway in Tralee to pay for services, said Paul. Maybe if they stopped wasting money, such as on machinery and on the square in Dungarvan, they might have a lot more, says this texter. Damien, because Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are happy to take the crumbs again from their government, this is why we are the way we are. Well, it's Sinn Féin and Labour and the Greens that are in the pact at present. So let us know your views. Keep texting in. And also, if you want to text in, the Waterford gift voucher is available in Hamani stores. Over Hamani stores, you've got a €50 Waterford gift voucher to give away every day. So just text in 083 3333 975. In Hamani stores, it is acceptable in. I want to give a special mention as well to the family of Paul Finn. I didn't know Paul was unwell. Paul of Design and Display. He died at the weekend, and deepest condolences to his wife Liz, daughter Lisa, son Adrian, all his family and friends. May he rest in peace. We are back with the thorny subject of Lisa Smith. Now, keep your texts and comments coming in. I'll come to those in a minute. I'm going to go straight to Declan Power, though, because I know he's a man in demand. Good morning, Declan.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, thank you. Declan Power, security analyst. We've had you on the programme a number of times before, Declan, and I spoke to you there a number of months ago about Lisa Smith. Can you just remind people very briefly, Declan, if you wouldn't mind, please, what is Lisa Smith alleged to have done, or what did she do in her public pronouncements up to now that has warranted her arrest?
Well, she's been arrested on suspicion of terrorist-related activities, and she's been questioned now with a view to seeing will they charge her under the Offences Against the State Act, and on training, was she involved in firearms training? Was she involved in activities of that nature? And then the other strand would be, well, is she guilty of being a member of a violent extremist organisation, an illegal organisation, regardless of what she was doing? And those are the two strands. And evidence will be based on some of what she stated herself, on the record in broadcast, print and online media, statements that have come from other sources, partner national security agencies that have been active in that area and that may well have interviewed Lisa Smith herself as part of their own activities. And so it'll be an accumulation of those things. And indeed, the other thing, the questioning process that's undergoing now, what the allegations will be put to Lisa Smith and her responses will be taken down, and then a file will be assembled, sent to the Director of Public Prosecutions, and they'll make a decision as to what happens then.
Yeah, it's one of those cases, Declan, that is really dividing opinion, I suppose, because, like, even just now, people texting in that there's a danger that some people may exaggerate the danger or even lie blatantly about her. And then there's others saying that she won't be charged with anything, it's grandstanding by police. And then others saying what's going to happen if, as you say, this file goes to the DPP, will she be out on, I suppose, on bail? It'll be very difficult maybe to see them keeping her in custody, although if there are terrorist-related charges, it has happened before with other prescribed organisations that people are kept in custody.
Yes, indeed. It does. It remains to be seen, depending on the nature of the charge, and indeed her own safety as well. I would imagine that would be an issue too, and the safety of her family and her child. So there's a variety of things to consider there.
Why would that be an issue, do you think, Declan?
Because of the level of vitriol that has been expressed by people within the country since this became an issue. There's a huge amount. I've been genuinely surprised at the level of vitriol, because it's been virtually uniform in its condemnation of her, from, I would argue, legitimate condemnation of the mere fact that she expressed any support at all for Islamic State, to vitriolic and poisonous statements that verge on hate, the level of hatred, and people's tempers and temperaments are in a sensitive state about this, and it could be seen as provocative to some people. Now, The law has to take its course, but I think we have to take into account nobody wants to see public order a breakdown, or anybody being unnecessarily harassed or indeed injured because of this.
Is she being vilified? Even with what job she had and her level of high, I suppose, contact with people in the Irish government. But is she being vilified, do you think? Is there been an overreaction by the media?
No, I don't think she's been vilified, in fairness. A lot of this is based on her own statements. I think the recent interviews she gave while she was in that camp were largely unhelpful to herself, and maybe even prolonged the length of time she was in the camp, made it more difficult for the state to be able to get her out because of the political sentiment that it created. I don't think she's been vilified. But I think we just have to, it's common sense really, we have to take into account that she has sought, by virtue of her going there, whether it's a crime or not, she sought to align or coalesce in some shape or form with what is considered an odious regime. And I think a lot of Irish people feel a sense of shame and anger about that. And that's where this is stemming from, quite aside from any legal issues that arise from it.
OK, we'll watch the space. Declan, I appreciate you taking the call. Thanks very much.
Not at all.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye now.
Declan Power there, security analyst, and he's writing in a number of papers this morning, saying also that it will be an important, I suppose, litmus test for this government, for other governments, how this case is handled. She is before the judiciary system, I suppose, at present. She's being interviewed by the Gardaí. We'll just have to watch this space and see what happens. Let us know what you think. 083 333 975. A lot of people texting in regarding the council matter. Here we go again, Damien. Come after the people who are self-employed, working hard to create employment in the city for little return to themselves. And you can't collect your rent from your tenants. We're sitting ducks for corpo incompetence. The rents should be collected, says this person. Other people texting about Lisa Smith. I hope all sensible people will leave her alone to get on with her life. She's suffered badly enough, I'm sure, after her initial mistake. Damien, how can they increase rates? I have a building in Lismore. I had to close my doors as it was losing money and I couldn't keep going. So I don't have money to open, and yet the council still want rates. The rates don't even cover anything like flushing the money. It's like flushing down the money down the toilet. Damien, when house tax was brought in, the government said all money collected in the area would be spent there. But where is all the money gone? It's gone to different parts of the country. That's a text in from Seamus. Keep your texts and comments coming in. Some other news that happened over the weekend. Last weekend was the last week, I suppose, of November, and we had heard that the company involved with planning permission and looking to put in the North Quays development was due to have their planning permission in before the end of November. Now, the statement issued by the council on Friday afternoon saying that they understand that the final documents in respect of the North Quays strategic development zone are being prepared for lodgement, that Falcon Real Estate will be publishing their environmental impact assessment report early next week, which is this week, to commence the planning submission process. That full lodgement will be completed within 2 weeks thereafter. So obviously we were all told it's going to happen before the end of November. We're now looking at within the next 2 weeks. With how can she be charged? She hasn't said anything that she can be charged with, says this texter. So again, a lot of people divided on this opinion. Let us know what you think, please. 083 33 military training. She went and joined a terrorist organisation, i.e. ISIS. Why wouldn't she be a threat to ordinary Irish citizens? If she joined the IRA, she'd be banged up, no questions asked, says that texter. Also, the issue of rates and other matters got to do with council budgets. Damien now work for the council on a CE scheme, and the waste of money is disgraceful. I can see it happening in different aspects, says this texter. Damien, why don't the City Council take the shortfall from the local property tax to make up the budget that we have to still pay? Damien, just wondering, what services will be cut to the bone? As an ordinary house owner, what services are we getting? Many of our roads in the estates are like a network of holes tied together with strips of tar. Footpaths are dangerous. As for the city, the only emphasis is on the Viking Triangle. Some of the other aspects of the city can be quite shabby. It's very difficult, says this texter. Obviously, the council can only spend, Margaret, as much money as they have. And the problem is that they're facing a shortfall of 1.3 million. So you heard what Michael Walsh had to say. He said we have to make the money up in some way. So we will move the year with you with flu jabs and colds and flus and all sorts of different things, I presume.
Absolutely, and we have to get you in to get yours, yes.
You do. Now, Nits, talk to me about Nits. I know a lot of people won't want to hear this, but what is a nit?
We spoke about this before, I think, because of close contact with the heads. But we are starting, as I think is the article recently been put out, seeing it in our secondary schools and older adults, some of the things, but it'll be obviously something that would make sense to what we're seeing say the front line in the store. The usual age group of this profile is our junior schools, and that's purely just because young kids are all in top of each other. They always have been, and then as we get older, we kind of like a bit more personal space, and we're kind of get anxious about these things when people are too close. But that is changing now with the selfies and different other things that people are getting that photograph taken, let's say.
And can nits actually jump from one head to another if you're leaning against somebody and taking a selfie?
Well, you see, that's head-to-head contact, so it has to be that close. They're not going to jump from my body to your body in a space of 12 inches. You know what I mean? We're talking that close of contact has to be basically nearly beside each other. On top. Nit
hasn't been invented yet that's able to trampoline across. Like, do they have? Do nits have legs?
They do. They crawl. That's how they work. Move. So they crawl down to the skin. They latch on, and they feed off your blood supply through the scalp. So that's literally, they go through a cycle of kind of 14 days, maybe even 21 days, I think, from total start to finish. You know, between being laid as an egg, which is attached to the close to the scalp, onto the hair follicle, which you quite clearly see. It's like kind of nearly the little greyish off-white egg that's the size of the top of a big biro. And to the louse itself, which is a good bit bigger. You'd see them. They're quite clear. They're quite obvious, you know, and they'll move around the scalp when you're looking at them. So I know. Yeah, I can hear you and everyone else saying the same thing.
And
only like clean hair, so that old wives say that only dirty children have it. It's incorrect, because they want nice, clean scalp to get at so they can get their blood supply. So cleaner hair is what these little fellas like best. What you're looking for when you see them, you got to treat them. There's a couple of different treatments, and the newer ones that we use nowadays aren't as strong a chemical space. They work basically by killing off the lice itself. Now, you may have to do more than one application, as in you might have to do it a week later, just to make sure that we get any eggs that mightn't have hatched yet, to get them as well. So literally, you're looking through the scalp, just down at the root, at the hair follicle near the scalp. That's what you're looking for. Anything that's moving or glued, little legs are glued to the hair. I know.
Can you comb the nits out of your hair?
You can't comb the lice, but you would comb the eggs. And that's where the combs are very fine and also can be very hard. People with longer hair will always find that the stress of it all is when you're doing little girl's hair, which is very long or curly, it's trying to comb through that with this really tight Ivor or metal combs. It's a bit difficult, but there are little tricks of trade there to use. Wash the hair first, use a very good load of conditioner in it, and combing through with that, because first of all the hair is just a little bit slippier and easier to comb. There's no point doing it on dry hair. It is an absolute nightmare to try and do.
And what's wrong with nits? Are they getting a bad name? Do they do they really do that much damage?
They don't do any damage to you. They're just itchy and annoying. That's all they are. So it's the same way as we'd often say we have fleas from the cats and the dogs and all the rest, and we only know we have fleas when you go into the doctor. You go, what are these itches? Everyone thinks it's just scabies or head lice, and you find out it's actually fleas, and because you've forgotten to deflea your animal every month or 2 months, that is where these things happen. They're never going to do anything to you. They're not going to kill you. They're not going to do anything else. You don't spread disease. They're just annoying and itchy.
And would they go if you didn't do anything to get them out of your head? Would they just die off naturally, or would they just keep reproducing?
They just keep reproducing and keep going through the cycle.
You could have hundreds.
That's where it is, and that's where it becomes, I suppose, the real element of where this becomes more annoying is that, a small bit of irritation is you can live with, but once it starts getting greater and greater and greater, then there becomes a problem. And then you have a greater chance of it spreading through bed linen or things like that. So if they're not getting fed, they will die off. So between bed linen and towels and things like that, they're the kind of things we're careful to change, because if you use a towel to dry your hair first thing in the morning, and then your brother or your mother does, or your father does, then you have a possibility of transferring a lice from one person to the other.
Can bald people get nits?
Not necessarily. Yes, they can.
Follically challenged.
That's about to say. Yes, you could get the nit, but the problem is he can't really multiply. So he has nothing to lay his eggs to attach to. So you could get it. So the cycle would be greatly reduced, and so they could camouflage or get in the way of.
Niall Mulligan, Mulligan's Pharmacy, thank you very much. Anybody who has a problem should go straight to the pharmacist, is that right?
Yeah, that's it. And I'd say there's some lovely little treatments you don't need. They're not as smelly as we all used to remember, and there's other ones as preventatives. I'm a great believer in the tea tree leave-in conditioner sprays and things like that, and natural.
Lovely. Niall, thanks for talking to us.
Talk to you then, Damien.
A couple of texters texting in. Jean said, oh my God, Damien, you were talking about rats last week, now you're talking about nits on a Monday, you're trying to kill us off altogether. It is an important health matter and something we want to discuss. A caller, my daughter has nits for 18 months. She's only 7. None of the lotions seem to work and the combs, no end to them. Any suggestions? The Waterford gift voucher, we have a winner. It is Jeanette Marshall from Dunmore East, and the answer was in over 150 stores. That's over 150 stores. That's our special competition from today, courtesy of Waterford Chamber. It's a promotion that we are doing all week. Damien, rent arrears. I'm in rent arrears because when I got married in August 2017, I produced a copy of my marriage cert to the rent section, which they asked me to do. But then whoever was over the rent section didn't, in my opinion, do the job properly, says this person. Whereas it might just have taken them a time to get into that and the rent to clear their hair. I use the shampoo that dehydrates them and a comb. I'm always on high alert now. Once is enough in the house. On the council rent, the council would say they do everything in their possible to make sure everything is done right, and they follow all the procedures and all the proper systems in place to make sure that they do everything right. Coming up, Dean Maria Johnson. Now, a lot of people texting in about the topics we've been covering so far. Thanks to Waterford Chamber for their voucher. We'll be giving out another one tomorrow. That lady we wanted to talk to about Nits can't come on. She's at work at present. It's one of those topics, Dean. Nits.
Okay.
Come on, give us a sermon on Nits. Come on.
That's some challenge. If you got to share it,
you can
that's
have it
my method.
In your Christmas message. You could work it into your Christmas message.
On Nits, okay,
on
that's
Nits,
a challenge.
Why not?
All right.
Or Lice, as they're technically called, you know. Okay, we'll move swiftly on. Dean Maria Jansen from Christchurch, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Soles of Their Shoes, an exhibition of shoes at the Cathedral.
Yeah.
And also festival. Tell us about this exhibition, please.
The exhibition is amazing. From the 25th of November to the 10th of December, 16 days of action against gender violence right across the world. And I got hold of an exhibition telling the story of gender-based violence against women through their shoes. And there's about 50 pairs of shoes on exhibition. So you come in and you think, oh, shoes, what are they doing? It looks lined up like a shop. But each story tells something about the women. For example, one would say, I walked out wearing these shoes. Or another would say, these shoes look very glamorous, my life wasn't. Or a little girl with glittery shoes, I want to be just like my mum. Or one man's shoe and saying, this shoe left a mark on my leg forever. So they were written with women who are survivors of violence, and they were written with people who walk with and support women who are victims of gender violence. And simply by looking at the shoes and looking at the comments of the women about their shoes, it opens up the whole Waterford. So the cathedral's open from 12:30 to 2 every day and all day Saturday. And what I've noticed is people come in and they're sloping in to see the cathedral, but they go over to the table and they look at it. Men and women, old and young. And it definitely says something to our hearts. And it raises a consciousness of the level of violence against women in the world.
Do you think we're getting better as a society in recognising that level of violence?
The figures don't add up, Damien. I was horrified to read that something like 1 in 3 women globally, 1 in 4 women are subjected to violence. That's a huge number. It's a huge number of women, and it's right across all classes, education levels, backgrounds, and it varies from femicide, from the killing of women, and rape, to neglect, subjugation, Lice. And the women in India are up in arms against it. So has it improved? The figures don't say so. The figures say that it is still...
Are trying to constantly raise this. Mm-hmm. You have other organisations then that have been set up, men's organisations that talk about violence against men. If the message isn't getting through, and that if some men in particular, let's deal with violence against women at present, if some men are continuing to be violent against their partner or against their daughters or whoever it is, and somebody listening to this might be out there doing that, might have tormented somebody at the weekend, might have abused somebody physically, emotionally, whatever. Like, what do you have to say to them?
There's no justification for it. It's wrong. Stop it. End of. There's no justification to hurt, abuse, rape, demean a woman or a girl. No matter what in your head is your justification, catch yourself on. This is wrong. End of. And no matter what games you play with yourself in your head that you're justified, you're not.
Do you think some of the people that do these crimes are street angels?
I can't generalise.
Yeah.
I can't generalise because it's so complex. But the one thing that is very clear is that women need to be heard. And women need, in some ways, it takes immense courage for a woman to take the first step for her own safety or her children's safety. It takes immense courage. My goodness, I just admire these women so much to either go to the vulnerable persons unit in Ballybricken, which is actually an amazing unit. There's a special unit in Ballybricken Garda Station for vulnerable persons. Go there. Go to Women's Aid. Go to Oasis. Ring a doctor. In other words, I think the hardest thing for women to do is to find her own voice and say, this is happening to me. I want it to stop and I need help.
Because it's probably, and in studies that have been done on this, it's not something that happens just
it's
suddenly.
Incremental.
It's incremental, yeah. It might start with something small. It might start with emotional abuse. It might then develop into physical abuse. There could be matters relating to I suppose finances, lots of different
control.
Things. Yeah. So it's a bullying. But bullying underestimates what it is. It can be. It's far more than that. But to take that step and to say, I'm going to do something about this, that's really, really difficult, because then it opens up an entire gamut of child protection issues, TUSLA potentially getting involved, the Gardaí getting involved, having to maybe leave the home, your children having to come with you if there are children involved.
That's why it takes courage, because in some ways you can become habituated to understand, or it's really scary out there. It's scary at home, but it's more scary out there. But the real thing is that there are people in society there to help you. And when you take the first words to break the silence on what's happening you, and go and find Oasis House, Women's Aid, Ballybricken, the Vulnerable Persons Unit, wherever you take the first step, even just talking to another woman or another person who may not realise what is happening to you, that first step, and to know that you're not on your own, and that there is an outrage really among the majority of decent folk against the behaviour that's happening to you. And the reason the person is doing it is their issue, but they are answerable for it, to you, to your children. You do not have to be subjected to this abuse and fear and control and demeanment. It's not good.
The exhibition is on in Christchurch?
It's in Christchurch. Come on in.
Yeah, because a lot of people will be in town for Winterville as well. So just to pop in and...
we can't afford to open it all day, Monday to Friday. So what we do, the Friends of the Cathedral, who are volunteers, open it. And it's open from 12:30 to 2 every day. That's where the footfall part of the whole exhibition in the Cathedral. And I think it's about breaking the silence and addressing a silent level of hurt in our community that really needs voice.
A man has texted in, is there any other exhibitions with men's shoes involved? Men are exposed to violence as well.
Absolutely. But the figures show that 1 in 3 women are subjected to violence, 1 in 6 men. And this is specifically to give voice to women. It's not to say men are not abused. Absolutely.
Another texter, my husband was, as they call him, a house devil and a street angel. Everyone thinks he's a lovely person. We're apart now. It's the best move I ever made. Obviously not going to reel out that lady's name. So there are stories of women that make that jump.
It's a huge, huge, huge step to break the silence. It takes immense courage. But there are people who care about you, who have walked that path themselves, have said, as that lady said, she recovered her life, maybe for herself and her kids. And that first step takes huge, 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 huge courage, but you're not on your own. And the minute you start breaking the silence, and the minute you put into words what's happening to you, to another human being, I'll give you one story if I have time. I worked in Dublin, in an area that was very deprived, and there was a woman who was beaten regularly by her husband. An appalling story. He did a crime and he framed her for it, and she did time, during which time her kids were taken from her. She lost her reputation, she lost her home. She was just a little sparrow of a person. And she said, well, Maria, you know what I did? Quote unquote, and it's the line that changed my mind forever. She said, I took back the power. And I think that once you break the silence, talk to another, and think that actually you have a right to safety and to respect, you're beginning to take back the power, and there are others who will walk with you on that road.
Dean Maria Johnson, Christchurch Cathedral, thank you so much.
Thank you, Damien.